Hello and welcome to the Black Ponder. I'm Neil Trotter. Today we're going to talk about the philosophy of books. That's right, we're going to talk about the meaning behind the concept of the book. Specifically, the hard, physical, tangible version of a book, right? This book, this kind of book. Not so much this book, digital book. Oh man, look at these fingerprints. Yeah, I use it a lot. But we're going to talk about that via this book right here. It's called No-ISBN on Self-Publishing. And it's by, here we go. Salon for Kunstbuch. Okay, probably butchered that, but I'm sorry. I'm a California boy with American English. And I apologize. Maybe I said it right, which is, hey, that's all good. But if not, sorry about that. But this is a great text. This is a self-published book, and this is about self-publishing. And it's about a lot more than that, and we could talk about that. First of all, ISBN, what is it? It stands for International Standard Book Number. So if you write a book and you want to sell it, you can register to have your book get a serial number here in America, the ISBN, International Standard Book Number. And that makes your book more easily classified, like when you sell it on Amazon.com or when you sell it to like bookstores, like Barnes and Nobles, for instance. They can more easily classify it, and it makes it more easy to sell, because then now they can put it in a genre, or they could put it in a category, and then now they can put it in their little algorithms where they can target certain people. It makes the book more sellable in that corporate system, that corporate capitalistic system. But there's a lot of books out there, great books, that don't bother to register for that serial number, right? They don't bother to do that, and they don't sell on Amazon.com. They don't sell their books on, big corporate outlets like Barnes and Nobles, or even mom and pop stores. You won't see these books. You'll see these books being sold by the artists at like little festivals, conferences, conventions, and in this case, art galleries. So what Salon for Kunstbuch is, what it is actually an art exhibit, is an art gallery. And the art gallery is founded by this artist named, if I could look it up right quick, Bernhard Sella, or Kella, I think it's Sella. And this person, Bernhard Sella, is a fine artist living and working in Vienna. And what this art exhibit is, it is a book gallery that operates sort of like a bookstore, but not really. It's not really a bookstore, but books are sold there. They're also traded. It's very interesting. But it's more of a gallery where books are arranged in artistic ways. And it's an artistic examination of what is a bookstore, or what is an art gallery, or how can we look at books in artistic ways. What is the artistic expression of a book, right? It's asking those kinds of questions. Those are artistic questions, and they're also philosophical questions. And to go along with that art exhibit, we have this book right here, kind of more like a companion book to that art exhibit, No-ISBN. And it asks the philosophical question of what is self-publishing. And here's another question that it asks. It asks, why is it that we still have this hard, when I say hard, I mean, physical, tangible version of the book? Why does this still exist when we have this, the Kindle, or the Nook, or these other e-readers, or these tablets, or the iPhone, or the Android device? I remember back in the day when electronic book readers were first coming out, there was this huge scare, this fear, or this controversy that was going on, and people were thinking, oh no, tangible physical books, they're going to go away. And we did see a lot of bookstores go out of business when that was happening, right? Most notably where I'm from, Borders. Borders was this major bookstore chain in America. I think it's in other other North American countries. I'm not sure if it existed outside of America, but yeah, Borders was this big, huge bookstore, and it went out of business. There's this other huge bookstore, Barnes and Nobles, that's still around. And I think that might be because they have an e-reader called the Nook. But I might be wrong about that. It might be other reasons, but I think that might have been a reason. But today, we look today, and what happened? Physical book copies are still around. They haven't gone anywhere. They're still alive and kicking. The electronic book and the physical book coexist together, right? I read books on my Kindle, and I read physical, tangible books. There's also a lot of mom and pop independent stores that are thriving and doing very well. This is true. Where I live, there's a huge amount of independent bookstores, and every time I turn around, I see a new independent bookstore around, and it's pretty cool. So the physical, tangible book did not go away. It's still here. So the question is why? Why did it not go away? Why did it not get phased out? And as we move forward into the future, further and further into the future, will it eventually get phased out by the digital book, the e-reader? Will we eventually not see this kind of book anymore? Or will this type of book always be here to stay? Will it always exist? That's the question, the philosophical question that this book right here, No-ISBN, is exploring. So let's examine that philosophical question, shall we? Of course, if you're new to the Black Ponder, we read quotes from the text, and in that way we explore these philosophical questions that are being raised. I like to do that. So let me read the first quote right here. From the artist's point of view, museums and galleries represented a flawed and unfair system that decided over their future using criteria the artists themselves deemed irrelevant and unacceptable, and kept broad spheres of society from accessing art through their elitist aura. The walls of the gallery thus became a metaphor for a conservative, dated, closed-off system within society, comparable to the ivory tower, frequently evoked since the mid-20th century in arts and sciences alike as a place where actors' production is isolated from the real world of society. So I think what's being said here is that art institutions like museums or galleries, they have a certain criteria, right, that they follow in terms of the judging of which artist and what art gets displayed in their space. A lot of that decision-making process has to do with money, right? A lot of that decision-making process has to do with privilege, okay? And also a lot of that decision-making process has to do with perspective, point of view, and even limited experience, I would argue. Now, don't get me wrong, I love museums. Like, I go to museums a lot. Museums are off the hook, right, in my opinion. But it is true. You go to a museum, a particular museum, and you will start to notice an aesthetic, right? A certain point of view. You'll go to a museum and you'll start to see, like, oh, I see, this is the type of art that this museum is displaying, right? And you will come to almost predict, like, oh, okay, I see why you're gonna have that, and that, yes, that makes sense. And it's gonna be rare for you to see art that's outside of that established aesthetic that you get used to when you go to the certain museum that you go to, right? So oftentimes when I want to look at other kinds of art, I have to go outside museums and outside galleries and just go to the street, underground independent art, which is all over the place, specifically where I'm from. It could be a mural on the wall or some sort of independent art festival in some warehouse or community center. People selling art in festivals, at vending tables. You can definitely find great art outside of just museums or established art galleries. And that's what the book has become, more so now than ever. It's become like an art gallery that an artist can create for themselves. They don't have to stay so focused on that, I gotta get my art displayed in a museum. Once I get my art displayed in this certain art gallery, then I have arrived. You don't need to do that anymore. The physical, tangible book is able to release artists from that lockdown ideology, that lockdown perspective. And an artist can say, well, forget it. Forget trying to showcase my art in a museum. I don't have money for that. You know, I don't have the strings or the connections for that. I'm going to put my art in a book that I'm going to make myself, and then I'm going to go to these small town festivals or these independent conferences or conventions, and I'm going to sell it myself to just the people that, the attendees that are there. And that way you can showcase your art. And the book itself becomes a museum. The book itself becomes an art gallery. It's a way to showcase art outside the art establishment, the elitist art world. A new Silk Road is thus invented by those traveling animated by the desire to depart from an art that creates objects, and thus invent a complex art that carries knowledge and easily distinguishes itself from the luxurious product. For this reason already, the geography of this network represents a questioning of the globalized artistic scenery, decentralized locations, detached from the dominant cities and countries, lightweight institutions that are sometimes temporary, with multiple and frequently migrating locations. One might believe it to be a crusade, but the contrary is true. Even if some succumb to the temptation to don the coat of a defender of ethics, the majority has no desire to put its energy into a heroic pose. And this quote is talking about art for art's sake. And it's also talking about escaping the established elitist art institution, what their concept of what art is. And that might not be necessarily bad or good. It's just the established art world has their idea of what good art is, but that's not necessarily encompassing all of good art. That's just that's their world. But of course, there are many kinds of art that exist outside of that concept created by the elite art world. And so the book, the physical, tangible book, not only allows artists to showcase their art outside of that so they don't have to force themselves into that concept, it also it just allows them to say, hey, forget it, I'm not trying to I'm not even trying to create for you. I mean, that's not my point. My point is to create for myself, or create art, what I'm trying to do. And that may not fit into your aesthetic, but that's what I'm trying to do. What it kind of reminds me of when I think about this? It reminds me of the Oscars or like other major award shows, right? And the Oscars particularly are being accused now. They're not very inclusive of diversity, like movies that have a diverse cast of characters or are created by diverse people, whether that be of ethnic, racial backgrounds or different religious points of views or different sexualities or what have you. They're being accused of that, and that's true. Obviously, you look at the Oscars. Obviously, most winners and movies that are nominated by the Oscars are of the cast of characters are people of European descent, and a lot of the people that have a lot of the directors, the producers, the crew people, a lot of those people are people of white European descent, right? You might have your outliers or your rarities. Like last year, they gave it to Moonlight, which was all African American cast, but that's rare, right? That's rare. You don't really see that often in terms of the Oscars. But to tie that back to what I'm talking about in terms of the book, let's examine that movie, Moonlight. I remember I heard an interview of the director of that movie, and he was saying that when he was making that movie, he had no intention or like he wasn't trying to make the movie to win an Oscar, right? Because everybody knows the aesthetic of the Oscar nominated or winning movie, right? Everybody knows that aesthetic, what you have to, what type of movie usually wins that award. And so he wasn't really concerned with making a movie that fit within that aesthetic. He was just trying to tell his own story, and that was not only was that very powerful, emotional, moving, and a great film, it was very artistic and just as valid as anything that the Oscars would give an award to usually. But I find that very fascinating in a number of ways. I find it fascinating because nowadays you can get movie making equipment a lot easier. You can buy like high definition cameras for around like $200, $300 even. Go to like your local electronics store, instead of shelling out thousands and thousands of dollars, and you can make a decent film, independent film on your own. And you really don't need to cater to the established art world to create great art and release it and share it to the masses, and even to make money off of it, in all honesty. Also, when we look at the Oscars, you have to look at, like, okay, who are the people that are making this, who are the people nominating these films, you know, who are deciding the winners. You know, look at the type of people and the backgrounds of these people, right? Or, you know, even the people that run the organization. Look at the backgrounds of those people. If you look at the backgrounds of those people, it makes sense the type of movies they decide, who wins, and who, I mean, the movies that they choose align and correlate directly with the type of experience, perspectives, opinions of the people running the Oscars. So it makes sense, right? The problem is, the Oscars are like, you know, to move people who make movies, when you win an Oscar, it's like winning the Super Bowl, right? That's the problem, right? Instead, we shouldn't look at winners of the Oscars like this grand high level achievement, because who's actually making the decision? Are the people making the decision about the winners, what weight do they have? I mean, of course, they have a lot of financial backing, and when you win those type of awards, you're able to make a lot of money, you know, and that's a huge reason why it's so attractive to win those awards. But a lot of independent development and a lot of independent publishing is taking away from that the power of the established elite art world, that institution where they have that limited perspective. And this No-ISBN, this book right here, is arguing that the physical, tangible book is also in a way doing that. Like, that the reason why the physical, tangible book is still around is that it is a way for people outside the establishment, outside elite organizations, to also create and have their work showcased just as well and just as beautifully as art that fits within that elitist established standard. And that's why the tangible book is still around. In opposition to a marginal network, an aesthetic or topical movement or activist venture, a true field of research has been initialized through the new technological opportunities, current flow of practices, and the need to question the modern era's standards of artistic dissemination. Now listen to this quote right here. Studying the artistic system through the lens of its questioning also means falling back on artistic experience, per se, against almost religious institution the art world has become. An adaptation of a new atheism in art has occurred to reactivate the desire for emancipation through art and knowledge. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about, like, when you go to a museum, right, or one of these high-class art galleries, and you look like, ooh, you know, now this is art. You go to these spaces and you feel like, oh, now I'm an art appreciator, right? But who are they? You know, the curators of these museums and the organizers of these institutions, they are not the final authority of what art is. You know, and I'm not knocking museums and established art galleries. You know, again, like I said, I like going to those. But museums offer a certain kind of art experience, and they offer a certain kind of art perspective, and that's fine. But there's also all types of other art that museums you will not find in an art museum that is incredibly valid and very important, and that you can study yourself and get a lot of, you can learn a lot and develop as a better human being. And a way to find a lot of that art is by checking out a lot of these self-published books that artists come out with and display their art in. And in that way, this tangible physical art book survives, right? It survives, and it exists because it has that function, which is very important in human culture. We now can look, you know, going back to the Oscar award show, there's many movie makers out there who have absolutely no aspiration of winning the Oscars. They just want to make their art. And you know, there's many people out there who look at the Oscars and they don't feel like the Oscars represent the ultimate or best of what the movie world has to offer. Of course, there are many people who are out there who believe that. And, you know, in my opinion, I'm not knocking the Oscars. I actually never really considered the Oscars as like a showcase of the best, absolute best films, right? The winners of the Oscars. Now, the movies they give awards to, a lot of them are very good films. Like, they're very great films. I'm not saying they're, you know, the Oscars choose horrible films. They choose great films, but there's also many, many great films out there, amazing films that you'll never hear about, or the Oscars will never mention, just because it fits outside that aesthetic that they have. And independent movie making, as well as independent book publishing, is taken away from that almost religious type of admiration we have for these elitist institutions like the Oscars or the museum. It's taking that power away from them and is allocating it and is distributing it to a lot of great artists out there who are now able to showcase their work just as well and fine and dandy without the need of the attention of these establishments. So what is a book? Let's explore the definition of what a book is. Here's an interesting quote from this particular book right here. What is a book? A book is a sequence of spaces. Each of these spaces is perceived at a different moment. A book is also a sequence of moments. A book is not a case of words, nor a bag of words, nor a bearer of words. A writer, contrary to the popular opinion, does not write books. A writer writes texts. The fact that a text is contained in a book comes only from the dimensions of such a text, or in the case of a series of short texts, poems for instance, from their number. A book is a space-time sequence. Books existed originally as containers of literary texts, but books, seen as autonomous realities, can contain any written language, not only literary language or even any other system of signs. Among languages, literary language, prose, and poetry is not the best fitted to the nature of books. A book may be the accidental container of a text, the structure of which is irrelevant to the book. These are the books of bookshops and libraries. A book can also exist as an autonomous and self-sufficient form, including perhaps a text that emphasizes that form, a text that is an organic part of that form. Here begins the new art of making books. And that's exactly the reason why this, the tangible physical version of a book, still exists, and it coexists with this, the ebook, right? The electronic digital edition of a book, okay? Because a book is much more than text, all right? It's much more than text. When you buy a book on Kindle, right? you can get the Kindle format. I forgot what the format is called even, but it reduces the book to text, and you can alter the text, make it as big as small as what you want. You know, the page numbers get realigned and all that. You know, you start having interactive links where you can link to different parts of the book via different text. The Kindle format has reduced books to text, but a book is more than just text, right? And we're actually beginning to see that now more than ever. The electronic book has forced us to realize that books are more than just the text that's inside of them. They're an art form. They're an art form. And the cover of a book, you know, the colors of the book, how the text is arranged, you know, the spaces. This book actually has a lot of pictures. Pictures in this book. These are pictures of self-published books. That also communicates a lot of meaning. There are more aspects of a book other than its text that can communicate meaning, value, substance. And that's when the artistic point of view comes in. So it's really this artistic value that a book, a physical, tangible book has, that is the reason why it still exists and the reason why it won't go away. And as long as there's artists in the world that are using the book to communicate their artistic message, the physical, tangible book will not go away. It will not go away. It will always be here. It will coexist with the electronic book. Now, never say never, right? I mean, you never know what's going to happen in the future. I mean, who knows? But it seems like this the message of No-ISBN is definitely onto something. The philosophical answers to the question of why the tangible book is not going away, it makes sense to me. Now, this book, it has no ISBN itself. It is self-published. I actually bought this from a festival, it was a zine festival, I believe. So I don't know where you would get it. I guess you can look it up on the internet. Maybe I'll put a link up and maybe you can find it on the internet somewhere. But I don't think you can walk into a bookstore and find this unless it's maybe a secondhand bookstore. You might get lucky. But this is a great book nonetheless. Make sure you give self-published books a chance because they have a lot to offer. You've been listening to The Black Ponder. Tune in next time for more philosophical thought.